Team Richmond, we are here. Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in as we have a conversation about organizational culture and values with subject matter expert Mr. Ron Keith. Over the past few weeks, we've heard from Mayor Stoney and Administrator Saunders. Our conversations were a sneak peek into culture, employee relations, and employee engagement. Today, Ron and I are going to talk through what's coming related to culture and values in the city of Richmond and how your voices can and will be heard. Ron, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As we begin, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with organizational culture and values and why it's so important.
Well, I started my company really to help individuals extract what I call the dynamics out of them. And whether it be at an individual level, whether it be at a group level or departmental level or organizationally, if you think about it, great companies are really just made up of great people. And oftentimes that gets missed. So someone may say, I want to work for a great company. Well, that means you have to be great. And so one of the things I found that separates the excellent companies from the not so excellent companies from the ones that are really struggling is they not only have great people, but they have an environment that's conducive where those people can exhibit those skills, and then they quite candidly have mechanisms in place that reward those behaviors on a consistent basis, and you'll see those companies outperform their competitors time and time again. And might I add that the employees who work for those companies wind up having a better work experience, wind up not being so stressed, wind up enjoying what they do, and quite honestly, making a greater impact in the work that they're called to achieve each day.
So I love that word dynamic. And I think we have a lot of dynamic employees here in the city of Richmond. And so I think it is about being dynamic and sort of pulling that greatness out of all of us. I think sometimes we forget, especially in governmental organizations, we get so focused on the work that we forget to connect our employees back to the greater mission of what we're doing. And I think us taking this time right now to sort of talk through what's important to them as people first, as opposed to employees, is going to be so crucial to how this work carries on, not just in the next 6 months, but over the next 5 to 10 years. And so when we look at sort of organizational culture, and let's take a step back.
Okay.
What is organizational culture?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. I actually don't like using the word culture,
Okay.
Because quite candidly, it just, let's use a much simpler word. So for everyone who's watching, do you or do you not like to win? And if you ask that very, very simple question, most people will say, yeah, I like to win. I like to have all the green lights on Broad Street. I like to get first class, bumped up to first class. Well, don't you want to work for an organization that also likes to win? So replace culture with just winning. What are we doing each and every day that places us in a position to win? What's winning? Serving our residents well. What's winning? Getting things done that help create greater efficiency. And so culture really is about how do we go about doing what we do in a way that positions us to win each and every day? How do we connect together in a way that we win? And so let me just debunk one of the great misnomers. We don't all have to agree to win together. How many championship teams had great players that really didn't all agree with each other?
Right.
And so we come together for winning. We understand that none of us in a corporate setting are created to do this thing alone. We need each other. We're supposed to be connected to each other in a way that I can help bring out the greatness in you, the dynamics in you. You can in turn do the same, and if we do that on a consistent basis, guess what? We position ourselves to win. Our customers win, our residents win, we win with each other, and there's no greater cologne, no greater perfume than to make the room smell well than winning.
Right.
And that really, if I were to really talk about culture and just kind of flip the script a little bit, I'd say, what do you want to do to help us as an organization, as a government agency, to win each and every day? And if you come to work and say, that's my focus, I want to win today, it really changes the approach to how you do what you do.
I like how you said that. And when we talk about winning, if we take it to an individual level, I think we have to ask ourselves, what is a win for us? What does that look like for each individual to get it to be that collaborative win? And that can look different for people.
You hit it. I watch basketball like many of you over the weekends, and so some players help win the game just by rebounding. Some players help win the game just by cheering the other 5 guys on while they sat on the bench. And so every person has to understand their role in that process and how important that process is. And so at the end of the day, the team who wins in a couple of weeks, the championship, the gentleman who sits on the bench will be a winner just like the guys who played on the court.
Right.
And you're 100% correct. What oftentimes happens in a corporate setting or in a work setting is people really get confused about where their roles are and how do they contribute.
Absolutely.
And how do they make the difference? And should they be doing the same thing that maybe someone else is doing? And so it's really important in defining culture, winning, and really understanding how to go about creating a successful environment, that you really do have to understand what's my role, how do I play that role, how do I add value in that role? See, this is key. How do I add value so that I, again, can position the team to win each and every time? I improve the probability that my team will have success, and that's really the key.
And you said an important word that we're going to talk about, and that's value. And so are a person's personal values synonymous with what they see or feel at work?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'll answer it in this way. When an individual comes to work and they don't see themselves, meaning they don't see their values, the things that they view in a certain context, if they don't see themselves even being appreciated, if you will. When those things happen, then it's very difficult for the person to do those things that we just talked about, to really give that extra effort, to really give what I call discretionary effort.
Right.
That's when, and many of you are watching have done this, you've cared so much about what you were working on, you stayed a few minutes late, even though you didn't necessarily have to. You may have worked on it when you went home, even though you didn't necessarily have to. And so that's that discretionary effort that's very difficult to achieve when you don't see some of the things you value, see some of the things that are important to you, when you don't see those things at work. It's almost as if you have extra baggage in the car that's slowing you down, if you will, in the trunk of the car that's slowing you down. If you're going to move at a high pace, with accuracy, with passion, and so forth, then you really want to be in an environment that's conducive to your view, if you will. And every organization has to try to do that. Now, but catch this, it's 2 parts.
Okay.
It's the organization doing what it can do to make sure that the scenery and that the values are there that correlate with you.
Right.
But it's also you, the employee, the individual who signed your name on the job description, saying, I'm going to make some adjustments myself to make sure I also connect with the values of the institution.
Right.
So it's 2-part. It's a 2-part dance. And oftentimes employees say, what is the company doing for me? And it should be, what are we doing for one another?
Right, the alignment of both.
Correct. And when that alignment takes place, then you have synergy. And when you have synergy, things flow well. It's kind of like when your significant other are grooving and you're in a good space together, things go well.
Right.
And that's what happens in any relationship, and work is a relationship.
Right. And we have to take this time, sometimes every once in a while, to take a step back from the work to reassess what our values are.
Right.
Because over time, things change, right?
Absolutely.
And so even in a work situation, we need to do that same type of evaluation.
You really do need to step back. Not only does work change, objectives change in terms of what the company is trying to do, the organization is trying to achieve, resources change. We had a resources change. You have something called a pandemic that changes the way you go about doing your business.
Yes.
So 100%. Your personal views can change. I believe, how many of you watching, you had a certain position in your 20s, and when you got to your 30s, that position kind of morphed and changed to something else. And so the ability to take a step back, do a quick assessment is not just a necessary component, but I think a healthy component as well.
Very good. And so, as I said in the introduction, our leaders have been giving peeks into culture, employee relations, and employee engagement. So it's important, and they realize that we need to take sort of this stop and talk about this and do the work. But we've also had conversations with leadership about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So they realize that doing meaningful work, this culture work, values work, sometimes means hearing things that we need to change in our organization, and that can be a little dicey sometimes, right? Especially when employees are having the opportunity to say what their needs are sometimes, right? And so why is it important that leadership be on board for this type of work?
Vision starts from the top, but vision is executed in the middle and in the bottom. And so not only is it critical that leaders have a thick enough skin to hear from the people that are being called upon to execute the vision, but they're not going to succeed. Leadership will never succeed where leadership is not truly connected and willing to hear from those in the middle and those who are really constitute the foundation. So there's a proverb that says, the people celebrate when the leaders listen. And so where leaders are listening, the people will celebrate, and what that means is the people are willing to go about doing the things necessary for all of them to achieve. Where the leaders' ears are deaf, the people cry. Why? Because no one's hearing their voice. Right. And so it is not just essential, and I want to give a huge shout out to the leaders for quite candidly saying we're willing to take this step and we're willing to hear these things. They deserve a ton of credit. Now, the second part of that is that all of you who are watching and everyone in the city, all of the employees who are connected to the city, you're going to have to be bold enough now to say what needs to be said, because where there is a great description, there can be a proper prescription. And so if there's not a description of what's really going on, how can we become better, then you cannot write the prescription that's necessary to solve the problem.
I like that that's a great analogy. And so we'll sort of segue into the next piece, because it's about honest conversations. They're important, and creating spaces for employees to discuss their values, what they'd like to see, and how they want to feel is critical to the overall sort of working of the organization. How are you specifically going to work with us and our employees to sort of create this space for them to be heard and seen through this process?
All right. Well, I can't tell you all the secrets today.
Just a little sneak, just a little sneak peek.
Well, I'm going to practice what I just kind of stated. One of the first bases, we have to listen. And so that means we're creating some space and we have some tools that we'll be putting in place to really hear from the employees. And that really is a first base. And I get it, and I trust me, I understand. Many people are saying, well, I've said something before. Again, where there is no description and proper description, there can be no prescription. You're out of order to have an issue with what's going on, but you won't talk about it.
Right.
Yeah. And so the first base is we have some tools in place that we'll put together to hear from all of the employees. Then we are doing something I think is phenomenal. We're calling upon a group of those. We're going to be and we'll give some more details later on. But we're calling upon a group of city employees to come together and create a team of folks that, quite candidly, really, for the lack of a better term, can help either further articulate and further drive that conversation and bring better clarity, communicate that back to their colleagues. And then we have some other exciting things going on first. But I think the first and the second things that I talk about is we have some tools to hear from you, and then we have another mechanism we're putting in place where we're actually bringing people into an environment where we can have further discussions and really talk through the challenges.
And I think you kind of answered the next question, was how is this going to be different from those employees who are going to say, well, we've done this before. Right. This process is different because we are creating those feedback loops in this, so we want people to know that we hear what you're saying, and it's not just sort of evaporating into thin air. And being able to come back and say, here's what we heard you say, kind of loop.
I'll take it even further. I wouldn't be here if there weren't a commitment to the process. So you say, okay, how is it different? I really feel strongly, and I've had this conversation with the leaders, that and you're a good example of that, where we have some strategic people that are truly committed to the process. They're committed to winning. They're committed to doing the hard work. They're committed to asking the difficult questions. Right. And now we just simply need all of the very dynamic employees who are out there to help us with that process. And this won't be just a good place to work. This can be a great place to work, a dynamic place to work if they join us in the process. So I think the difference here is you have the right people in place. The timing, I think, is really, this is the right time to do this. And you, the people who are watching. You're the difference. So if you don't help us, then it becomes more challenging.
Absolutely. And so we're going to do, I know coming up soon, we have an assessment that we're going to be sharing with our employees.
Yes.
And it talks about values. And so I thought we'd give them a little bit of a preview so it didn't absolutely sort of freak them out when they saw it in their emails or they got a paper copy and they're like, what is this?
Okay.
Because I think one of the things that organizations tend to do is sort of spring things on their employees.
Yes.
And say, we want you to answer these questions. And oftentimes they have no idea, like, why.
Right.
So part of this conversation is to talk about that why.
Okay.
And so we've sort of put together what you call the assessment, is what we're going to call it.
There you go.
And we've sort of come up with 6 words, I think, that we want employees to think about strategically as it relates to themselves, I think probably in their personal space,
Right.
and then into their workspace.
Absolutely. So let's talk about those 6. And let me say this. These 6 items are foundational components. Let's, just for the sake of for those of you who are watching and you're eating your lunch here, put your sandwich down for a second. Get a pen out. Write these down. These are as critical in an organization as they are in your personal life when you're connecting with people. These are relational components. The first one is their community-centric service. Service. Are you serving the individual who you're called to serve? Service is key. Service is key. If you don't have any servicing, my wife made me go downstairs and get her a cold bottle of water at 12 o'clock midnight last night, guys. That's service. So unity is about, do we work towards a shared goal?
Right.
And so if there's no service and there's no unity, usually service is out of order where there's no unity.
Right.
What is unity is the coming together of individuals. Unity is so important. I don't say teamwork because usually teamwork is what happens after unity has come into the room.
Right.
So people usually don't work, the team doesn't work together until first there's unity. Respect is another foundational component we'll be talking about. How do we demonstrate that? How does that manifest itself? What does that look like? Innovation. How do we become an innovative entity? How do we become an organization that's open to new ideas, that values different views, that's inclusive? And that's really important in today's marketplace. And then trust. Listen, goes without saying, if you don't have trust in any relationship, you're probably getting out of that relationship very, very quickly. Quite candidly, anything you don't trust, you're probably getting rid of it. So,
right.
And then finally, accountability. How do we have an accountable environment that will help help you do your job, and then help the end user, who are our citizens, get the value they need? How do we make sure we're accountable on all levels? So we'll have questions that surround those. It won't be 50,000 things we're going to ask you. This assessment is really, really simple. We want to assess how we're doing in those areas. We want your feedback, and that's going to be really one of the first tools we'll use to really determine how do we go about creating a winning environment here.
And I'm excited about that engagement because one of the other things that's a piece of that assessment is then sort of this open-ended sort of, if we miss anything, you can kind of tell us what we missed.
You hit it on the head. So we're not just saying, here's what we think. We want to hear what you think. So you hit it right on the head. Are there some additional things? And I know some of you probably saying, yeah, but what about this and what about that? We got you. We got a what about that question for you where you can say, hey, Petula, hey, Ron, I think that these are also key and strategic things. And we definitely want to hear from you, and we want to take those things into consideration.
So as we conclude, is there anything specific that you want our employees to know as we move into this work?
Well, I think that if you're going to, I'm going to go back where I started. Many people say to me, hey, Ron, I want to work for a great company. I work for a great organization. That means you have to be great. And so the degree to which you're committed to greatness will play a huge role in whether or not the organization can be great. It matters not whether you are outside right now when you're throwing a trash can in the back of a truck, or whether or not you're in a beautiful office overlooking the Richmond skyline and you're making key decisions. It matters not where you fall. What really matters is how are we contributing to the winning of the team. And so if we're going to become a great organization, which is well within our ability, well within the ability here, we need people to recommit to being great at work and own their contribution. And if that happens, the whole organization changes. The value of what you do takes on a higher level of importance. you can change the city. And that's the thing I really want people to grasp, that you have the ability to change the city, and you have the ability to change how people perceive the city, and you can make an impact. And very few jobs do that.
Right.
This kind of job does that. And I'm going to ask people to partner with myself and you and all the leaders who are making this possible, and help us to make that happen.
And the change is important, and the change starts here.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about that, we always think about the external piece.
Right.
But once we change the internal, the external becomes really, really simple.
Attitude is essential, and quite candidly, often what one has achieved in life is directly proportional to what one believes about themselves. And so if success is going to happen, if again, we're going to become a great organization, become an organization you're just beyond crazy bananas proud of working for, then you got to 100% change your outlook. And that's key. So quick story,
Okay.
a reporter goes and they're building this huge sanctuary. The reporter goes and he interviews the workers. He wants to get an idea of what's going on here. It's going to be phenomenal. And he asks the first worker, he says to the first worker, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the work you're doing? He says, man, get out of here. I'm working for $9.50 an hour. He says, ooh. Goes to the next guy. He says, can you tell me a little bit about the work you're doing? He says, man, I'm just out here, digging this hole. He goes to the third guy and says, can you please give me a little idea of the work you're doing? He says, man, I'm building this great edifice that one day people will come to and be able to have weddings in, and marriages and baptism, and I couldn't be more excited about what I'm doing. Which one are you? Which one are you? They each have the same job, but they have a different perspective and a different outlook and a different attitude about the contributions they're making to what's being done. And it's that will help shift and move the organization into the right space. And which one of you is my question. And if you're number one or number two, don't sweat it. We need to get you to number three. And if we get you to number three, you'll have a great work experience. You'll enjoy what you do. It will just be it will have impact beyond you. It'll have impact on all you work alongside.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Team Richmond, are you ready to get to work? And not the work that you do every day in your everyday spaces, but this values work. We're going to be the change we want to see. So thank you, Ron, and we can't wait to learn, grow, and change with your guidance. Team Richmond, enjoy the rest of your day. Until next time.